Hi friends, this is my first video and I feel that it would be correct for me to introduce myself at the beginning. In short, my name is Sabyasachi Bhattacharyya and I am a retired employee of the government of West Bengal. Way back in 1994, on successfully qualifying the WBCS examination Group A, I joined the then West Bengal Commercial Tech Service in 1995, which was later amalgamated with certain other services and renamed as West Bengal Revenue Service. Since then, after serving almost 29 years, I have voluntarily retired from my service in 2024, almost 5 years before attaining the stipulated age of superannuation. At the time of retirement, I was posted as the Additional Commissioner of Revenue and State Representative at the West Bengal Taxation Tribunal, where my job was to defend the state before the Honorable Tribunal. But today, I am not here to defend or oppose the state. What I am here for is to try to express my honest and ample views on perhaps the most controversial and intriguing factor that is keeping numerous West Bengal government employees swinging between hope and despair, while the West Bengal populace in general baffled and sometimes confused. That factor is the dearness allowance, which in short is called DA. Perhaps nobody in West Bengal now is unaware of the fact that the state government employees are fighting an almost decade-long legal battle against their own employer, the government of West Bengal, only to establish their claim for getting DA at the central rate. The legal battle is currently being fought before the apex court, that is the Honorable Supreme Court of India. Though it appears that to most of the litigating employees as well as the government, the main contention is whether the West Bengal state government employees are entitled to get DA at the central rate or not. But in my view, the main contention of the DA case is and should be only to determine whether DA is a fundamental right of the employees or it is merely subject to the discretion of the employer, who at their sole discretion may or may not give it to their employees, depending on their whims and whimsies. Once this point is decided, the rate of DA at which it should be given would be quite obvious. If the Honorable Supreme Court decides that receipt of DA is not a fundamental right, and instead is just a matter of discretion of the government, then I think the employees will have to admit that at whatever rate their employer, that is the West Bengal government, gives or have given DA to them earlier is exactly what they deserve. But if the Honorable Supreme Court decides DA to be the fundamental right of the employees, then I would try to elucidate later as to why the government of West Bengal will necessarily have to give DA at a mathematically correct rate. So, first let us see whether DA can be a fundamental right of the employees or not. Though the functioning of the government of West Bengal is not suggestive of it, but I believe that any sane person would understand that the main role of any elected government should be to ensure proper community services to the populace under its jurisdiction and to use most of the money collected as revenue for that purpose, rather than to distribute doles and grants to certain sections of people at their whimsical discretion. Now, how can a government ensure the delivery of these community services? It is possible only through hiring qualified employees, who in turn would deliver those services to the population on behalf of their employer, the government. But what is the fundamental precondition of any hiring? Why would the hired employees deliver services on behalf of their employer? What should the employer commit to give these hired people so that they would work? That's the salary. Salary. Thus, I think no one should disagree that salary is indeed a fundamental right of the employees. Also, I think no one should disagree that salary should be definitively quantified and committed at the time of the hiring itself, and henceforth the employer loses every discretion on its so quantified value and thus be bound to pay it to their employees. Please kindly note that I have mentioned quantified value and not quantified amount. I will later explain why. Now let us try to define salary. I mean, what exactly is a salary? Actually, all of us know it, right? Salary is the amount of money committed to be paid by the employer to the employees in lieu of their service. Correct? But now if I ask, what is money? Then I am sure the question will appear confusing to many. Yes, it may legitimately appear confusing, but actually this is the exact question which needs to be addressed if we at all try to understand the relevance and necessity of the DA component of the salary. So, let us try to find the correct answer to this question. What is money? And hence, in its light, what is salary? Though often misunderstood, money is actually not simply a numerical value. An equal quantity of money in terms of numerical value can in reality have different purchasing power in different time and location. First, let us see location. 1 unit of money in USA, that is $1, is not equal to the same 1 unit of money in India, which is 1 Indian rupee. We all know that $1 is more than 85 times valuable than 1 Indian rupee. Now time. Again, the true value of 1 Indian rupee in 1950 is definitely not the same as the true value of exactly the same numerical quantity of 1 Indian rupee in 2025. Thus, money and hence salary cannot be solely represented by its numerical amount. Exactly the same numerical amount of money can carry different values depending on time and place. Thus, money and hence salary cannot be completely quantified by simply a numerical value, but rather it's actually an abstract representative of the purchasing power of its holder. The more money one has, more is his purchasing power, and vice versa. Suppose the cost of a shirt at some market at some specific time was rupees 100 per piece. Then, if I pay someone rupees 100, he can purchase that shirt. But if after some time, when the cost of the same shirt has increased by 20% and has thus become rupees 120, can he purchase that same shirt then if I pay him the same amount of rupees 100? No. Even if I give him rupees 110, that is 10% more than what I gave him earlier, then also he would not be able to purchase that shirt. This is because by then the purchasing power of rupees 100 has reduced. This is a mathematical certainty. As costs increase, the purchasing power of an unit of money reduces in an exactly inverse proportion. Hence, when at a particular time an employer commits his employee to pay a definite amount of salary, it's obvious that actually he commits to empower that employee with the purchasing power of that definite amount at that place and at that time. Thus, as and if the cost of goods and services of that place increase with time, the commitment of the employer remains unfulfilled till he pays his employee with that amount of salary which has the same purchasing power of the originally committed salary at the time of commitment. Thus, as respect to receipt of salary from an employer is a fundamental right of an employee, that same right applies to the purchasing power of that salary. Now, the particular component of salary which takes care of retention of its purchasing power is what we call DA in case of government employees. For non-government employees and other self-employed person or businessmen, there always remains some such component of their receipt which takes care of this retention of purchasing power, though they are usually not called DA but given some other name. In fact, for self-employed persons, these components are often decided by themselves, considering the market demand of their service and usually in parity with that charged by others of the same occupation. Whereas, for employees of private sector, this component of salary is often called by some other name and determined or calculated by their employers after adding therewith the performance incentive and several other financial components. Thus, receipt of DA in whatever name it is called, and definitely is a fundamental right of each employee, be in private sector or government sector, failing which receipt of salary itself will lose its characteristics of being a fundamental right and in turn return the society to its medieval period when bonded labours were an accepted norm. If any private employer fails to remit this component, thus leading to the devaluation of salary, that employer surely loses employees who do switch jobs to serve some other employer of the same industry, being competitor of the previous employer. But unfortunately, the government employees don't have that option, because in any particular place there is no alternative competitor government which is functioning and which is open to accept employees of different experience levels from another government. Thus, government employees, if deprived from the payment of correctly calculated DA, do justifiably feel as bonded labourers, having no option left but to carry on with the deprivation. Experience in serving a government are usually of no use outside the government sector. Now, once it is established that receipt of DA is a fundamental right of an employee, the question comes whether the rate at which DA becomes receivable can be mathematically determined, or whether it can be discretionary in the hands of the employer. To answer this question again, I have to go back to the example of increasing cost of shirt, which is stated earlier. If the initial salary of an employee be rupees 100 at the time when the cost of the shirt was rupees 100, then when the cost of the shirt gets increased to rupees 120, the gross salary of the employee should also be exactly rupees 120, nothing more or nothing less, so as to keep his purchasing power constant. Thus, the basic salary being constant at rupees 100, the DA element must necessarily be rupees 120 minus rupees 100, that is rupees 20. Not a single rupee more or less. Thus, the exact amount and hence rate of DA should solely be market driven, depending entirely on the behavior of the market in terms of price rise, and thus can never be determined on anybody's discretion. So now the question that automatically follows is, why are then the employees of the West Bengal government demanding DA at central rate? Aren't that rate also subject to discretion of the central government? Why should the government of West Bengal be bound to abide by the discretion of some other government, namely the government of India, in other words the central government? Yes. Had it been so that the DA given by the central government also depended on the discretion of the central government, then obviously there would have been no reason for the government of West Bengal to follow it. But the reality is a little different. The central government does not give DA to its employees on the basis of any discretion. Instead, it follows the very much scientific method of calculating the DA payable on the basis of previous 1 year's AICPIN. Now what is AICPIN? No, it has nothing to do with PIN code, that is postal index code. Neither is it in any way related to bank pins, which are personal index numbers. Instead, AICPIN stands for All India Consumer Price Index, AICPIN, which is actually the most scientific and acceptable formula for determining the all India average rate of price rise of an array of consumables over a period of time. In a simplified way of expression, AICPIN is effectively the ratio of current price to be paid by an average Indian consumer for some definite quantity of consumables with respect to the price of a past base period of exactly the same consumables in exactly the same quantity. Thus, the DA given by the central government is actually on the basis of a well calculated index and not on the basis of anybody's discretion. Now, though most of the employees don't understand these details, the government of West Bengal actually very well understands it. Hence, it has once raised the question as to why they have to pay DA on the basis of Indian average. In my most humble view, no. It is never mandatory for the government of West Bengal to pay DA on the basis of all India average. But they should definitely not be discretionary. The government of West Bengal can very well pay its employees on the basis of West Bengal Consumer Price Index, calculated by some independent body following global norms, as done in case of computation of AICPIN, if there be any. I'm sorry. As per my knowledge, which may well be wrong, West Bengal does not have any such index. Though they might try to get some such index calculated by their own officials to suit their own agenda, but any such index cannot be acceptable unless it is reviewed by independent authorities outside the control of government of West Bengal and follows global norms. In this connection, I believe it won't be wrong for me to draw the attention of my viewers towards another fact. While computation of AICPIN, the individual indices for each state are also calculated. And in most of the periods, that index for West Bengal are usually more than the final Indian average. Thus, if the government of West Bengal opts to pay DA on the basis of state average, it is highly possible that they would end up paying more than that as per AICPIN. That is the central rate. In absence of any acceptable independent index calculated exclusively for West Bengal, I think it is statistically correct to accept the Indian average, West Bengal being nothing but a subset of India. Thus, to conclude, in my most humble view, first, DA should definitely be considered to be a fundamental right of the employees, and the litigating employees must try their best to get it accepted by the Honorable Supreme Court of India through proper deliberation of justifications. And secondly, instead of demanding DA at central rate, the employees should rather demand DA at a correct, well-computed rate. In case of absence of any other better alternatives, they should only suggest the payment to be on the basis of AICPIN, that is,